Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We are here on Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news. We're here on Sundays from 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story at 9 a.m. And we stream those programs live at those times at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations unfold. And we hope that you will subscribe as well as click notifications so that the next time I post a conversation, you will be notified. And you'll be able to tune in and listen in and find out more about what it is that we're talking about, and hopefully add that to your repertoire as well. We also encourage you to, if you can, we would greatly appreciate it. We would ask that you would help us out financially if you can. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when you are asked what email address to put into the little window there, they say, hey, who do you want to send this to? Richard@richarddugan.com. That's Richard@richarddugan.com. And we thank you for those who have helped and for those who will help. And of course, we also ask that if you can, take the time during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, spend some time going within, listening to that still small voice. I think that today it's going to be an interesting conversation. We're going to talk about a lot of different things here on the program with a very special guest, a gentleman who is a musician in his own right. Among other things, he's written a book called To Live or Maybe Not. His name is Gary Revel. And Gary, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I watch your show. I always enjoy watching it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's dive in. First of all, I'm going to say that as far as our program is concerned, and we always try to be optimistic. You know, that's kind of the goal here. We don't like going down that road. And so when I saw the title of your book, I was intrigued. To Live. I like that part. Or maybe not. I know that the story of the book is contained within that title. So I guess the best thing to do is start right there. How did this title come about?
Well, in 2006, I had been online Googling some stuff, some information, and I run across a book called The Investigation of the Assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. It was published by the government printing office. Well, I looked at it and looked at some of the pages, and I saw in there my name, Special Investigator Gary Revel. And the reason that irked me a bit is because when I worked with the House Assassinations Committee in 1977, and I agreed to investigate the assassinations of King and President John F. Kennedy, the chief counsel, Richard Sprague, had told me, he said, your name will never get out. He said, you're going to be working covertly, and you will be working for yourself, and then you'll just be getting back to us with incidentals and stuff. But if you ever release your name as having investigated these things, it will be your own doing. It will be up to you. So when I saw that in that book, I realized that the government did not keep their promise to me. And I thought, well, best thing to do is just write my own story, write my own facts about the truth about the whole matter. Mm-hmm. And then put it out, and then to live or maybe not. So that's the way that happened.
So when you say to live or maybe not, this is referring to you in terms of your, shall we say, your longevity,
right.
in that we've all been privy to some of the, we'll call it shenanigans, to put it kindly. And sometimes we tend to, I don't know, step out of our realm, if you will, to um, go where, I don't want to say no man has gone before, but in this case, it kind of applies, doesn't it?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
when, go ahead.
yeah, and the kind of work that I had done when I was in during the Vietnam War, I was working with naval intelligence and some other government organizations. I became very much aware of all that. That you can step out of line, and you can not only spend the rest of your life in federal prison, but you can be terminated even to that extent. So I was very aware of that when Jack Kershaw asked me to investigate the King assassination, and I was careful before I agreed to do it as well.
Well, why? And I should preface this by saying, folks, that this is the 28th edition.
Right.
And I think that's, and of course, here on the back cover, it talks about shining the light of truth into the darkness, into the darkest halls of injustice. And so you've made it through 28 editions of this book. Uh,
Right.
why, uh, why are you, because I would say even today, are you not taking a risk in that regard?
Well, yes, you always do. I mean, anytime that you have done any of these kind of works for the government or in association with the government, and you begin to put information out to the public, you always walk in a certain line. Like just within the last year, I've been warned by my congressman and by Senator Cornyn here in Texas, and by the president's office, and reminding me, saying, to paraphrase what they would say in one sentence, is to say, well, you've signed documents agreeing to keep certain secrets, and you cannot divulge those secrets to the public, or
Hmm.
there are severe consequences. So basically, that's why I thought the last edition was the last one. I thought 27th, but then this past year I realized, well, I need to kind of tighten things up, tie up some loose ends, and finish this book.
Right. You are watching and listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, and we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're talking with Gary Revel. He's the author of To Live or Maybe Not, and we're talking about a rather interesting situation where this whole thing is like, um, it's obviously almost like a spy novel. You can see history through the eyes of a man who lived it. It's a memoir packed with unexpected gems. And to say that Gary Revel has led a fascinating and fantastic life is an understatement. From his service in the U.S. Navy to his work investigations in the deaths of JFK, his brother Bobby, and the formidable icon, Martin Luther King Jr. Even Revel himself is caught off guard by his life's twists and turns. And I find it fascinating, of course, that the story begins, of course, with with Revel's birth in the small town of Florida, Alabama. His mother and father divorced, and when he was 5, music became a friend to Revel. We're going to talk about that as well as we continue. And he formed his first rock and roll band when he was 15. He enlisted in the Navy after high school, where he served during the Vietnam War. And after his honorable discharge from the Navy, Revel went to Hollywood, where he cultivated a music career and became a champion for raising awareness about the dangers of global warming. And I know that even whether you're in Texas or you're in Florida or somewhere along that southern Gulf Coast, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, Gary. and moved to Santa Barbara 18 years ago. I spent 46 summers in Phoenix. It was 45 summers too many. Although I will tell you that I had been telling people over and over, even after I got into broadcasting, you've got to stop laying down the asphalt and concrete, because when you put more asphalt and concrete down, you hold the heat in. And when you think about Death Valley, 133 degrees, let's just say, all right, you and I both know it gets damn cold that very night. Reason?
Isn't that something?
Because nothing is holding the heat in.
Right.
But apparently, whoever's running the show from one year to the next in these cities does not seem to understand. Oh no, we've got to grow, we've got to advance, we got to keep the economy going, we got to do this, that, and the other. It's like, well, okay, then you'll pay the consequence. And now they are, because now I just got off the phone with a gentleman I do a program with in Phoenix, and he was telling me that this year, so far, they've already broken the record for the number of days over at 110 plus. And it's only, as you and I are talking, early August. And they've got another at least 2 months of heat before things start to cool down. Let's get back into our conversation. First of all, I will let our listeners know, and I don't want to give all of this away. We want them to pick up a copy of the book. We'll tell you where in just a moment. But the book ends with Revel and his family back in Hollywood, where he returns to his passion for music and writing. And we're going to feature a song that was shared with us that you had written in reference to this. And my understanding is this song goes back a few years, long before we were the term global warming or climate change became part of the zeitgeist.
Exactly.
Tell us about this song.
Well, I was living in Hollywood. I was about 21 years old. And I decided to go downtown to Los Angeles one day. And I went downtown, and the smog was so thick, you couldn't even see the second red light because of the smog.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see actually a little like tiny ashes just floating in the air. Now, I learned later on that was because they had factories around back then, and in Los Angeles, and some of that was from the factories, but of course it was from the cars too. And but when I saw that, to me, I just said, okay, this is not the way God intends for human beings to live.
Mm-hmm.
That's the impression I got. It just something was wrong, And then a few months later, I wrote the song with my younger brother called Mother Nature.
Tell us about the song. We're going to play it here in just a moment and let people listen to a portion of it. But to tell us a little bit about the lyrics and how you formulated the song. And by the way, how long did it take for you to write? Because it sounds to me like with what you just shared with us, it probably didn't take long at all.
Well, what was unique about it is after I got back to Florida a couple of years later, my younger brother, who was part American Indian, he was my half brother, same mother, but my younger brother, he came to me one day. We had written some songs together before, and he said, I've got a song called Mother Nature that I would like you to help me with. And I said, okay. So we started working on it, and I realized this is the song. This is the message that I wanted to get out, from that day downtown Los Angeles. And so we finished the song probably in a day or two. And then a few years later, I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I recorded it there with some of the best musicians there in Nashville at Acuff and Rose. That was when Roy Acuff was still running the Acuff Rose Company. It was the number one country music company in the world. And we recorded the song there and released it as a single record, I believe in 76 or 77. That was about the time that Al Gore was there. Now, he hadn't went public about his concerns about the climate yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we were probably the first one that really went worldwide with an announcement, that Mother Nature needed some help.
Well, it's funny too, because I've heard a lot of different stories in regards to all of this, and one of them, and I really do want to have your opinion on this, because I was listening to an old bit by George Carlin, and of course he was critical of people who were going berserk over climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it. And he starts going back in history. Now, way back. I mean, millions, if not billions of years.
Right.
And the various processes of extinction that have happened over the millennia.
That's
and
right.
the earth is still here. The earth is still here. But that may be true. That may very well be true. However, it's also been stated in some of the interviews I've done with many of our more spiritual, metaphysical people, that we are now headed towards, and I don't know if we've reached the tipping point, if we've crossed the line I believe this is the potentially sixth extinction event, human extinction event, not animals, but humans.
Right.
And then, of course, the earth will regenerate and do her thing, but we won't be here. Yeah. And I think that's really what people are concerned about. And there was a list, and I can't remember who brought this. I think it was my friend, Dr. Sky, on our program Skyview, where we talk about astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. And in our weather segment, I think it was a week or so ago, he listed the top 5 cities that will be not uninhabitable, but will be the worst places to live. And my hometown is on that list of 5.
Well,
so talk to us a little bit about the perspective of, yes, we're always going through cycles, and the fact that here's a cycle we're going through. It's getting warmer and warmer every summer. I don't know how much longer we can handle this. How are we going to generate the power to run the air conditioners and so forth? My feeling is we're going to have to move underground.
I'm here in Galveston, and I was here about a month and a half ago, and then I went up to New York, and the Hurricane Beryl, followed me to New York. It spawned a tornado up in New York while I was in New York. So wow. I was telling people, well, it followed me up here, Yeah. But to go back to George Carlin, it's really interesting that you brought him up, because I went and saw him at the Hollywood Roxy, or one of those clubs in Hollywood, within the same time frame that I went downtown and got this idea about Mother Nature. So it's funny how things connect, Yeah. And I loved him. I mean, he's a great comedian, but he's a comedian.
Yeah, sure.
So comedians are supposed to take real facts, make light of them to give people a better perspective of things, and to make them feel better about things. So he was just doing what he's supposed to do as a comedian.
Sure. And there's a part of me that also does look at what he has to say, and with anybody for that matter, my perspective is that I take it all with a grain of salt.
Oh, yeah.
That it's one of those things where you just can't take it on face value. You've got to evaluate it yourself. That's part of one of the things that we talk about here on this program. As I mentioned, you may have heard me mention about taking time during this, what I call the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. And we ask people to spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice. Right. Well, my still small voice has been saying, do not talk about climate change. Do not talk about the science. Okay. All right. Talk about the thing that most everyone can relate to. Don't you think we should clean up our home? It has nothing to do with science. I know that in my family growing up, a family of 8, 4 sisters, a brother, and a mother and father. And on the weekend, usually a Saturday, each one of us would be given a task. Richard, I want you to go out and I want you to do the laundry. We'd been taught how. And my brother would be sent out to mow the lawn, and my sisters would be sent to do these different tasks. And before the afternoon rolled in, we were pretty much finished cleaning up the house. Well, why the heck would you do that? Why would you clean up your house? What's the point? Well, because it's kind of nice to live in a clean environment, at least for a week, as we dirty it up, of course, but it's just kind of nice. And of course, you need the dishes done and the clothes clean and this and that and the other. So why is it that it's so hard to get people to understand that if we were to do this, Gary, and I'd ask this as more of a question to you, if we were to do this, don't you think that alone, that perspective alone, don't talk about the science, would really go a long way in helping us to at least have a better, nicer place to live? Not to say the earth ain't a beautiful place. It is, but we
Yeah.
could make it better.
Yeah. And we have on our Mother Nature Festival Live website, it's mothernaturefestival.live.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 200 different things that people can get involved in to help. And just some of them are just like you said, some is just like recycling and keeping your own backyard taken care of. So, and that's really what it boils down to. And no, wait, let me add one other thing. And this only came to me in the last few years. In the Bible, the very first thing that God tells Adam to do is take care of the garden.
Right.
So it's almost like our job as human beings is to take care of this earth, and we're not doing it.
No, we're not. No, absolutely not. And that's the unfortunate part, that I've even heard people interpret the stewardship. There's also the word that subdue the earth.
Right.
Well, subdue doesn't mean to beat it to death.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting. So what back when it was released, what was the initial reaction of Mother Nature to the general listening audience?
Yeah, well, let me tell you about that. I was in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. If I had done it in Hollywood or New York while I was there and released it, it would have been a different story. But Nashville was conservative country music. It was very and Mother Nature. The song just didn't fit too well in that kind of an environment. So that's why it didn't do as well as it might have. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time to release it as a record.
Well, I am pleased that you did. We're going to play that for our listeners now, and I want you folks to take a listen, and I hope you enjoy it, and we will continue with Tell Me Your Story right after we hear Gary Revel's Mother Nature.
You ever think you'd wake up to this day with all our blue skies turned to gray? The fish of the deep blue sea are dying one by one. People are wrecking our world while they think they're just having fun. We've got to help Mother Nature if we want her to stay. We can't help her once a year. We've got to help her every day. We've got to clear the air so we can see the sun. Then when Mother Nature smiles, we'll know we've won. Have you wondered of the time when all will see what is best for her is best for you and me? She's here for us to love and let her goodness shine. Using her abuses her. Not my will, God, but thine. We've got to help Mother Nature if we want her to stay. We can't help her once a year. We've got to help her every day. We've got to clear the air so we can see the sun. Then when Mother Nature smiles, we'll know we've won.
As we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, that was Mother Nature by Gary Revel. And who else participated in creating that? You had other musicians and so forth.
I can tell you the people that helped me with that were some of the most amazing people. I mean, the musicians were like double and triple scale players in Nashville. Those are the kind of musicians that are on all the hit records that came out of Nashville back then. The head of the music company, of course, was Roy Acuff, who was the grandfather of country music. The head of the studio there in the publishing company, Wesley Rose, who was the son of Fred Rose. Fred Rose and Roy Acuff started Acuff Rose, and they, you know, in the 70s, they were still the company that had produced and you know, licensed the majority of the hit country music songs in the world, you know. And then, of course, they even crossed over like Ray Charles, Can't Stop Loving You. And a lot of the great songs that crossed over into pop came from Acuff Rose. My producer at the time that I was with Johnny Odelian, he had recorded Mickey Newberry and some other major artists at the time in the pop field, even though he was based in Nashville. And he is the one who actually picked out Mother Nature for me to record out of a couple of hundred songs that I had written. He picked that out. He said, "Should record this song."
Well, there was another artist in that era, one of my favorites, who was also very much on the environmental scene. He was very concerned, and many of his songs speak to that. His name, of course, and most people will know who he is. And I was listening to him long before he was ever cool. John Denver. And, he, you know, and it was so sad when I found out about his passing. You know, the only way I can phrase his passing is that what he was doing right before his death was one of his passions, and that was flying.
Right.
I do not say he died doing what he loved. No, just like somebody, a free climber on Mount Capitan fell to his death. He died doing what he loved. No, he did not love falling. Okay.
Right.
It's a weird way to put it. But you were joined by a lot of people. Pete Seeger was another. Harry Chapin was another. And the list goes on. Even some of the rock bands that were also quite concerned as well. And my understanding is that in the 60s, and this is kind of going back to your experiences with the government, our government actually released information about what we're now facing. They told us 50 plus years ago in documents that have, in some instances, have kind of been quashed a little bit nowadays because, God forbid, that, you know, the government knew before this and we didn't do anything. And so, and yet at the same time, I think each one of us already knows intuitively that we're dealing with stuff that we've never dealt before. I mean, when I was a kid growing up in Phoenix, watching the weather reports, here comes a storm from the Pacific. It's going to cross California, come into Arizona, and then continue eastward. And you'd get a few of those, you know, and maybe in the late fall through the winter and into the spring. And then there would be this cycle. You'd get those storms and it would drop a nice rainfall and everything. And it was wonderful. And then things started to change and the jet stream started to shift and move. And I'm all for the process of evolution. Do you really think that man has evolved in the past 50 years at all, or have we devolved?
Well, let's hope that we evolve, but as far as I'm concerned, that's still a question to be answered. Also, I'm just not sure about that.
Gary Revel's my guest. We're talking about his book as well as other things, the music, Mother Nature, and the book is entitled To Live or Maybe Not. What was it that, and obviously you've shared with us about your investigative work, but what was it about that work that that actually did compel you saying, I need to write this. I've got to write it. It doesn't matter the consequences. This is too important. The truth, as it says biblically, ye shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Talk to us a little bit about your mindset at that time.
That's actually a very good thing to bring up, because when the thought came to me to write it, I didn't realize how therapeutic it was going to be. But over the years, I've realized, even going back to it and tweaking it, and see, because I know that there's a certain line that I can't cross, so I always have to go back and tweak it up to that point,
Yeah.
But what has changed historically that I can get to, now I always do. And that's the thing, it's therapeutic in that I can talk about things that shine light on certain truths and inevitable facts that eventually will be realized, in spite of what even maybe a history book is teaching us. So that is the way it is. It's very therapeutic.
GaryRevel.com is his website. We encourage you to go there. I'm sure you can get a copy of his book there, as well as through Amazon.com. You can actually go to Amazon.com/live-maybe-not-Gary-Revel. You can just type in the name of the book in Amazon, Live, Maybe Not. We certainly hope that you, or maybe not is the title of the book, Live or Maybe Not is the title. So we hope that you'll pick up a copy of that, as well as go to his website, GaryRevel.com. And we are, of course, talking with him here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm curious about your upbringing. Now, you obviously, I mentioned earlier that your parents divorced when you were 5, but I'm curious as to your philosophical upbringing, because it seems to me like you have, and maybe this was something that you developed over time, but you had a almost a seared conscience when it came to the truth. If you know what I mean by that, meaning that it was important to you from the early age.
One of the judges I knew in Nashville, because I was a friend of Jack Kershaw, who was the attorney in Tennessee. I met people, and judges including, and one told some people one day when we were talking, we was in one of the conference rooms in Nashville, and he told them, he said, I want y'all to meet Gary Revel. He's like a pit bull when it comes to the truth. if he gets up, he's not gonna let go.
Yeah.
So it's that's what somebody said. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's was someone else's perspective of the kind of thing that I do. And yeah, I'd love to see things and get to make the perception of it more likely that people could understand it, and accept the fact of it. So that's what you mentioned there is very much what I like to do. Yes.
Now, your perception of where we are today, there are those who view, everybody has their own perspective. Let me back that up and say everyone has their own perspective on whatever it is that we're looking at. And
right.
At the same time, it seems to me, and I definitely want your input on this, that there is a certain inalienable truth that exists with certain events. For example, and forgive me for bringing this one up, January 6th, 2021. Now, I've heard it termed by some It was just a group of tourists who were taking us a tour of the Capitol.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that.
and I and of course there's there are others who say, well, no, this was an insurrection. And
Right.
I ask myself the question, what group of tourists have I ever been a part of where I've gone through and we've decided we're going to break things, we're going to destroy things in order to get into, so, and again, I don't want to get into that specific conversation, but talk to us about this country's perception of the realities that exist, because even with the attempted assassination a few weeks ago, there are those who say, no, it wasn't a bullet. You got hit by a piece of glass. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't real. This was all manufactured, and on and on and on and on.
Right.
And it's like, I'll even take this, I'll go this far. I was not in New York City on September 11th, 2001. I saw it across the country in Phoenix on my television set. And I will tell you, honestly, the first thing I said out loud was, wow, Hollywood is really getting really incredible about this. I actually thought it was CGI. I'm serious.
Right.
So,
Well, I can understand that.
yeah. So talk to us about our nation as a whole and its perception of what goes on here.
Well, I'm very happy to discuss this, because it's not the job of your everyday average citizen to discover secrets and uncover horrible that are going on. It's just not their job. They should be able to live their life, support their kids, pay bills, have a job, have some kind of something that brings them happiness in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Trust God for those things that they can't do on their own, and have a good life. So that's the perfect norm. That's the way it should be. When government gets so oppressed, so oppressed, and that it starts causing people not to be able to do that, then that's when government's gone too far. We all believe that, and we all know that. Now, when it comes to knowing secrets, are in prison, in federal prison today,
Mm-hmm.
for disclosing. In fact, I kind of hate to say this, but I've even helped put people in prison for doing that. In some of the work I've done with the government.
Mm-hmm.
One of my jobs was counterespionage, and we don't look kindly to folks who do stuff like that.
Right.
Now you brought this up, so here's a perplexing problem that we have right now: is there's thousands of people in federal prison today for less than Donald Trump did, and he's still out running for president.
Yeah,
that's hard. See, perplexing problem is to explain to people. They say, well, I don't understand. Why should I do this?
Yeah.
When president just ignores those,
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, that's the thing to the American people. I'm telling you is don't let it ruin your life. Okay, there's going to be some things that we don't understand. I'm sure there's people sitting in federal prison today. Why am I? If it's true that people can just sell government secrets and talk to their friends about them and do whatever they want, then I'm in prison. But the average person, don't worry about this stuff. It's unless you're in prison, you're just take it as part of life challenges, and keep making your way the best you can.
I think that's very good advice for all of us. If we start taking the perspective that often we hear, do as I say, not as I do. Then we start to have a little bit on the chaos side, and we don't need that. We really don't want to go that. We don't want to go down that road. It's not
right.
It's not beneficial for our country, our citizens, nor is it beneficial for us and our own soul, our mind, body, and spirit, if you will, which is some of the stuff that we do talk about here on this program, is dealing with the realities of who we are, what we are, where we are going. And I'm curious if you've ever found yourself, trying to get out of the quagmire, if you will. And how do you, knowing all of this kind of stuff, how do you know, how do you get yourself centered? How do you stay focused on what's really important about life? And you've sort of alluded to that already, but we, of course, we deal quite a bit here on the program with our spiritual existence. So talk to us a little bit about your perspective on the grand scheme of things, shall we say?
I was very fortunate. My mother divorced my father when I was 5. She just packed. He had been beating her up, and one day she just packed us up. She had me, 2 brothers, and a sister. She had 4 kids, and one day while he was at work, she packed the car and left. And she raised us as a single mom. She married a couple of more times after that, but for the most part, just raised us as a single mom. Now, when I was 12, she started taking us to a church, a little Assembly of God church in Safety Harbor, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And we started going regularly. And then they had a revival. A young man was there preaching, and it was his first time out as an evangelist. And
Wow.
and we went every night. Every night he would, preach his heart out and say, "Come out and get saved. Come out and, give your heart to the Lord." The whole, call to salvation. And
Sure.
would go. It was a big church, so there probably 100 Christians anyway. So, but on last night, I just felt sorry for the guy. In my heart and mind, I said, "You know what? I'm going up. I don't know why, but I'm going."
Mm-hmm.
But help the preacher out. And when I went up, friends went up. Well, I did that and got baptized in water, but I still didn't know really what it was about.
Right.
Then about a year later, by then I was 12. My mother took me to another church in Bartow, Florida, to what was called a Church of God. And that night, man, this guy preached fire on. I mean, he was. And I didn't, after the service, I didn't even think about it. It was almost like my feet just disappeared and I rolled to the altar. I was down there. And as soon as I hit that altar space, this language started coming out of my mouth. I just started speaking in tongues.
Mm-hmm.
And I started walking around the church, and I would walk over to someone. I'd just hold out a hand at them. So I was very fortunate. Okay, at 12 years old, I experienced a power, a miraculous power that God showed me personally. It was almost like he just picked me up with his hand and said, "I've got you from now on." And and I've been a pastor, a lot of different. The thing I'm very fortunate. I'm just a small percentage of the people in this world ever get that kind of an opportunity and a blessing from God like I did. So that really has made the difference. That's what's kept me alive all these years after I've been shot, and Mickey, and people have tried to kill me in numerous ways over the years.
Wow. Wow. Well, we're glad that you're here with us here on the program to talk about what you're doing and how you're trying to get the truth out. Are there other, I'll call them, are there other investigations that you are involved in now or that you've done since the first release of To Live or Maybe Not?
Well, I did, of course, Martin Luther King, John Kennedy in 1977. And of course, those two, MLK led me to JFK. It was from the MLK assassination investigation that had the threads that I followed to find that the same people who killed MLK killed JFK. Okay, so then later them leading to Robert Kennedy. And so I investigated the Robert Kennedy assassination later on my own. And I found, yeah, it's the same motive, same reason. They wanted to end the Vietnam War. The mafia, there's certain people in the military industrial complex, certain people in the CIA that hated him. Now, I don't say that that the government did this. It's not like the government. See, most people who work for the government are just like me and you. They just go to work and do the best they can. They have a grand plan to rule the world.
Right.
So it's just some really evil people sometimes that get into power, and they're able to use use the government in ways that we wouldn't want them to use it. So yeah, the way that all works.
Yeah, and I do understand, and it's fascinating and it is frustrating, but it's like you said, the majority of the people who work in government, they're just everyday citizens who just happens to be where they work, and they're doing the best they can with what they have to work with, and a lot of times they're hamstrung, because for whatever reason they're hamstrung. They can't.
Right.
They can't accomplish the things that they would like to because, well, there are certain rules, certain regulations. There's this, there's that, there's the other. And it's very, very frustrating, I'm sure, that they have to endure those kinds of things. And there's no sense of satisfaction, I would think, because they really can't accomplish anything. And yet there are it's a government. Now, I don't know how a government's supposed to be run as opposed to a business, but I keep hearing these comments. Well, we need to run it like a business, but it's not a business; it's a government. Right. So I don't know. I don't know how to interpret it.
Let me say this about that. The United States government is not a business. It never was a business. It never should be a business, and it should not be run like a business. Because, just for example, when someone goes to Congress and they go in there to represent people from his area, it's not like they're going to say, "Okay, how do I make a profit out of this for my people?" That would be if it was a business, only to make a profit. Most of the states in our country live off of this income that comes from a few states. So see, that wouldn't work at all, So, it's not a business for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know that in certain areas, and this is where it's not a business, for example, farming. There are farmers, and I have no problem with this, who receive subsidies from the government for whatever it is that they provide. Or we only want you to provide so much, but we're going to compensate you for what you're not going to grow. Okay. And it keeps them in business. It allows them to continue to provide us with the food that we put on our tables. So I understand that. There are those who want to get rid of those. And I'm thinking, boy, and the price of food is going to go through. You think it's bad now? So if you take away the subsidies, it's going to go right through the roof. But I don't know. I often think too, and getting back to the philosophical question, talk to us about how what your feelings are about the soul of America. However you want to address that, because I think about that a lot.
Okay. Well, I do too. I think a lot of folks do. Most Americans, I believe, are good people. Okay. I think most people in this United States of America want the best for not only themselves, but for other people. Now, the soul of America is that. The soul of America is good. It's honorable. And it comes from a place of unselfishness, of wanting to help others. Now, when people get rich and powerful, who are just the opposite of that. People who have evil intentions to use other people for their benefit and to exploit them or their resources, then you're going to have conflict and you're going to have problems, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that. Now we will continue to have that probably as long as, you know, we are on this earth in the present state that it's in. But it's not for those who do want the best and do believe in the best and the better to be changed or to change their mind or decide not to be good because others are bad. So in general, I think the soul of America is good. I think many times we have to adapt. We are pursuing a certain course and we find that it's not the course that we thought it should be. And so we have to stop and adapt and redo our thinking about things. And that's just life in general. So I think we're good to go. I think we're going to make it through this.
I think we are too, and I'm glad you put it that way. I know that there are a whole bunch of people who are very concerned about what's happening in this country, to the extent that they're, and again, I don't want to take away an individual's perspective, but at the same time, it almost seems as though they're willing to, as the phrase goes, throw out the baby with the bathwater.
That's right.
And it's like, are you sure you're willing to do that? Are you really sure
Right.
that that's the direction you want to go? And so forth. And I don't think it is. I honestly do not think that people are aware that that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that, you know, I mean, they say there are those who will say this is a republic. There are those who will say this is a democracy. I've heard it. I've even heard it put this way, Gary. It's a democratic republic. I don't exactly know how you would define that, but that's what they say.
No, actually, that's closer. That's closer to what it is in the sense that if it were a pure democracy, then you know you wouldn't have a Senate. You wouldn't have two people elected from each state. A pure democracy would just be a Republican representative type of thing, where all of the representatives had certain areas, and it was divided up proportionately throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
But see, with the Senate, we have two people sometimes that represent a few million people, and another two that represent 30 million people.
Right.
So that's not what would be a pure democracy. So that's kind of the Republican form of the democracy. So in a sense, it is a Republican democracy.
Yeah. You do feel you have a good feeling that, you know, we're gonna make it through all of these hurdles, and it's going to be okay, and we're going to continue to move forward, to maybe to make it to I don't know, 250 years of a democracy.
I really do. I really think that, and I think we showed this during the Civil War. You know, I mean, you remember that was so bad that brothers were fighting against brothers. I mean, they were trying to kill each other. You know, they were at war. They were in physical war. So you know, we made it through that. So I think we'll make it through this. It's in some sense of the word, it is like a war, and many people have pointed that out. But it's not the kind of war that we had back during the Civil War.
Well, let me ask you this question in regards to the process that we want to go through as individuals, and we're not talking now about the material aspects of it, but what process do you suggest, do you offer to us as individuals to help us to have that same perspective, that optimism that both you and I share. And I will tell you that I do my utmost to stay away from any form of news, social media, major networks, newspapers, radio, in spite of the fact that I work for a news, talk, and information station.
Right.
What do you suggest?
Well, what uh, most every psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist who have done a lot of study on these types of things always recommends a time when a human being has to spend time alone, seeking a higher source, so through meditation or whatever prayer, whatever thing they want to use to seek that elevated vision of themselves above the tumult, above the storm, so to speak, where they can find peace. And that, I believe, that's just what has kept me alive, is being able to pray and find that place where I can rise above the hate and the viciousness of the kind of work that I've had to do and be involved in at times. And I believe that however a person does it, just seek that peace, seek that part of themselves that wants peace and love. That's my key.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that one. It's, to me, fascinating to have this conversation and try to encourage people that yeah, we could, and I mean, I tell you what, Gary, you could have said, well, if everybody would just get out and vote, it's like, I'm thinking that isn't the answer, in spite of the fact that that is part of our process. I recognize that. I do.
Yeah.
But that isn't the answer, in my humble opinion. That isn't going to do it.
Well, for some people it will. For some people, that's the key to their way of expressing themselves through the vote is that will be their answer. Okay, I voted. Now I feel good. I did the right thing.
Sure.
But each person is on their own journey, and so I don't try to tell. Even when I was a pastor, I was very careful not to try to tell people how to live their life or how to walk with God, even, because I think each of us has a journey that we have to find the way that we need to go.
Well, I'm with you there. The book is entitled Live, or maybe not. The author is Gary Revel. We heard his song, if you will, that he released. My heavens, Gary, I was 17 when you released that song. And I have to say that there are times when in my mind, Gary, I'm 17, but my body is 64 in chronological years. And that's okay. That is really okay, because, I'm making it. I'm doing fine. I feel very good physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I do my utmost to maintain that level of optimism that is part of my makeup. Although I'm sure, Gary, you hit the wall every once in a while, don't you?
Well, yeah, and human beings do. I mean, nobody's above the fray to that they don't have challenges, and they don't stumble, they don't fall, and it's just one of those things that we don't have all of the answers within ourselves to help us achieve what we ultimately have to achieve. So as we grow and realize that, we become more humble. I think we become more able to receive help from God and from others.
Yeah. And then this sounds like a little bit like a loaded question, but what is it sounds like a strange question too. What's the goal? What is it that we're trying to achieve here in America, and what they refer to as the Great American Experiment?
Well, the goal for everybody, for every human being, is to live in peace and harmony with one another, with ourselves and one another. That's the ultimate goal. Now, government should be one way to help us with that goal. And as long as it is, then we can work within the government to achieve those things. But, there's been people for, the last couple of hundred years in the United States who just dropped out of government. They went and got into communes and all kind of things just so they could survive and keep their sanity. So, that might be a way for somebody else. I don't know. I can't live everybody's life, but that's the goal. Just live a life of peace and harmony with yourself and with others. And if that means voting and being political, then vote and be political.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then you don't have to do it.
Do what works for you. Do what works for you, I think is the real key message there. And I appreciate your sharing that with us too. It's something that each one of us has to do our part. I'd like to think that I'm doing my part by sharing these different stories with people in regards to the work, for example, that you're doing to try to make this a better world. One of our other phrases is that we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around. They don't work. And we want it to be more equitable, not equal, equitable for everybody. And I honestly believe that it can be. I don't think it's a utopia.
Right.
I just think that one of the places that we can start, and I would love your input, is just being kind. Be kind to
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that is a big key. Kindness, man. I've learned, I'm 75 years old, and I have learned when you cannot give away too much kindness, it'll always come back.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I will tell you that this has been a fascinating conversation. I wish you continued success and however many years, and I put it this way, however many years you choose to continue. I myself, I want to make it to 100. So I still have a good 36 years plus. I said years ago that I wanted to outlive my great grandmother on my mother's side, and she lived to be 100. So there you go. That's my goal. Let's wrap things up here. Thanking you, Gary Revel, for sharing with us To Live or Maybe Not. Folks, pick up a copy at GaryRevel.com or Amazon.com. Gary Revel is the website, GaryRevel.com. We will be linked to your website, Gary, so folks can find out more about you and hopefully get a copy of your book. And I would, folks, go to the YouTube and check out that song, Mother Nature, that you heard earlier in the program. I think that it will inspire you in many ways. And of course, ironically, though it was in 1977 that he wrote it and released it, I think it's just as pertinent today as it was back then. And I'm finding that with the music, my favorite music, of course, as I mentioned earlier, of John Denver, his music is even more profound today than it was back then. And so we just need to listen to all this music. We need to start getting inspired and moving forward. Gary, first of all, thank you so much for giving us so much time here on the program, and also for conducting the interview in a sort of an awkward position. If those of you who are watching the video, he's in his car, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm in Galveston, Texas right now. We were one of those people who got hit by a tornado. Our home got messed up, so I've been living out of hotels for the last couple of months for the most part. And right now we're in Galveston, so it's okay. It's all okay.
I have three final questions I ask all of my guests that I'll ask you in just a moment. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching. Tell me your story. New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., following the news, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. Podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We are also on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. Please subscribe and select notification so that you'll be notified the next time a conversation is posted. We also ask if you can help us out financially. We would be so gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. Just put in my email address when they ask for it, richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And take some time, spend some time in that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place during this, the decade of perfect vision, and listen to that still small voice. And with that, we now move to our final three questions for our very special guest. And to that guest, we ask, who is Gary Revel?
Gary Revel is a very fortunate human being who has been blessed by God to be able to do a lot of wonderful, amazing things. Have a wife, wonderful children, wonderful grandchildren, and still just keep going on. Amen.
What gets you up in the morning?
The hope that I can help somebody else in this life.
And finally, what was your best day?
Oh, wow. Now that's a good one. You know what? From a spiritual sense, from a spiritual side of it, it would be the day that God touched me with his Holy Spirit when I was 12 years old. Okay. From the real world practical side, it would be the day that I met my wife, Linda.
Well, I thank you again for being with us here on Tell Me Your Story. I wish you much success. And I hope that we get a chance to chat again and see how in a few months, maybe 2025, we will have turned that corner and we can stop looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, that we will have arrived. And I thank you so much for being with us.
Well, we want to be the light instead of looking for the light. We want to be the light.
No, I understand that. I do. Yeah, I do understand that. Absolutely. Again, Gary, thank you so much. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next podcast, videocast, love to all. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.